Hello and welcome to another episode of The Detective Case
and Detective Close podcast.
We're your hosts. My name's Aaron Shirley.
And I'm Brian Townsend.
Today our guest is going to be Lou Hayes, suburban Chicago police officer, now detective sergeant. Me and Lou go way back when I was working up here. Great teammate, great partner, worked some cases together, all the way back into patrol. It's funny because Brian had asked me, who are we interviewing? You can tell me a little bit about Lou. I go, man, Lou is an intellect, right? He's the thinker, right? He's an intelligent guy. I'm like, we're at SWAT training one day, and you think like SWAT training, goon squad, right? Like we break stuff, we break doors, arrest bad guys, and we're shooting on the range. And I was like, it was so weird. Like we're in a classroom, and he brings in all these Legos. I was like, so we have all these like type A, thug personalities, like heavy hitters. And it's like, I'm going to do a communications exercise today with Legos. Like who does that like for a SWAT team, right?
I remember that. It was one of the more memorable days.
Right?
And there's still folks that come up to me and recall that training day.
Wow. Welcome to the show. Let's talk first about your law enforcement career. Where do you work? Maybe your progression, what you're doing now.
I dropped out of college to take a job with the Hinsdale, Illinois police. It's a suburban Chicago community, low crime, great community that supports the police. I knew I found a home there early on in my career. Been there almost 28 years, 25 of which has been spent on a variety of task forces. So many of them with Aaron on tactical teams and now with investigative and intelligence teams. That includes homicide task force for the county, a team that investigates officer-involved shootings and other in-custody deaths, and then just a variety of other teams that handle carjackings and progress crimes. I'm starting to dabble in with intelligence, real-time crime centers, regionally, not just one agency. So, I try to be like kind of a Renaissance man of sorts and trying to get involved in everything and get like a systems perspective of it.
And
I didn't know you dropped out of college. So like, what were you majoring in?
So I was a mechanical engineering major.
Wow.
Turned finance. About 5 years ago when COVID hit, decided to go back, finish my bachelor's degree with finance in University of Illinois, Geese College of Business.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect time because everybody was back online and remote. So I finished out the remaining classes.
So this was like law enforcement, like a calling for you then, or?
Well, it was family business, right? My dad and uncle, and it just kind of something I always wanted to do as a kid. And, even in college, I was a mechanical engineering major thinking like, this is not what I want to do. Transfer into business, like this is going to be more applicable in my personal life if I do become the police, and lo and behold, I do.
And 28 years later, here we are.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You mentioned real-time crime centers. Okay. Tell us about that. What is that? What does that mean?
It's kind of up and coming field within policing. So there's all sorts of cameras, sensors, different information feeds that are accessible to the police and public safety entities. And what you need is somebody or a team to be able to ingest all of that stuff and then push it out to people in the field or air units, drones, other teams that actually do the response. So it almost works hand in hand with 911 dispatch, whereas calls that typically came in through 911 or officer initiated in the field. Now they're coming in through a variety of alarms, alerts, sensors, triggers, trackers, geofence alerts, and a whole bunch of other types of surveillance technology. So you can basically target the criminals. This is better for public safety. This is better for officer safety. And it's a very precise way of policing.
Wow. I joke with people all the time. I was like, because when we first started policing, there's times where I would literally follow footprints in the snow from where the crime happened to where the criminal was, right? It's like, well, this is pretty easy, right? But we're in a new era of like, hey, we need to be better at criminal intelligence, right? We need to be better at information gathering. And like probably the paramount thing, better at like, interacting with each other, right? Interagency cooperation.
So I think everybody thinks that interoperability, whether it be through the radios or through intelligence or other information, is the way to go. Like nobody's going to argue against that. But that's very high level thinking as a concept, right? The devil's in the details where the rubber meets the road and like the nuts and bolts of it. Like, what does that actually mean? So nobody's going to dispute that we should be interoperable, sharing information, working, collaborating with each other. But what does that really mean? And what I've realized is that when it's actually time to share or click the box to share data or to open up an API, that's just not happening. We don't have technology problems anymore. There's technology that will ingest and share this across all these platforms. We have people and policy problems. And the people and policy problems is what prevents that box from being checked in the software program to share between agencies, to open up data flows, to basically aggregate this stuff together.
Yeah.
So it's super frustrating. When we go back to 9/11, the big thing was interoperable radios. We're still 25 years later fighting radio interoperability in most metropolitan regions.
Wow.
That's frustrating because I think the public thinks that it's super easy to communicate between municipalities, between state, county, municipal, federal partners, and it's just not the case. So I spend a lot of my time figuring out what the workarounds are to those and to try to make those things a reality.
Yeah.
And every single bit of information, every program, every platform, every network system, it's a fight to get information shared across agencies.
So I think to give people like the lay of the land too for what we're talking about, because we have people view these from Nebraska or Kansas or the Dakotas, right? So the geography is different. So when people think it's like, yeah, the Chicago PD and they're big and there's like a sprinkling of suburbs. But what does that actually look like? Because we were kind of talking about earlier, like how many suburbs are there, and how close together are they? Because it's kind of like your criminals or my criminals or their criminals, right?
Yeah, I call it Chicagoland, but it's pretty ill-defined. Does this include Cook County and the collar counties that surround it, or, around Lake Michigan? Or when does a suburb stop becoming a suburb and it becoming like a more rural area? But I think we can all agree that it's approximately 250 to 275 suburbs of Chicago.
Wow.
So you've got major metropolitan area that's got extremely fractured borders. Probably includes, again, it's ill-defined, but I could easily make a case for up to 7 different counties. And many of these suburbs range from 10,000 residents to 50 to 75,000 residents, which is very unlike California, where you've got 200 and 300,000 person cities that are clustered together. Here, we've got 250 of them that are all on different radio systems, which is going to be different 911 systems, report writing systems, different data programs. So everybody's kind of out on their own.
That's like we were saying earlier, that's kind of the struggle, right? Because I could almost be standing in a very short time in 3 different counties, or, I can walk 5 feet and be in the next town. And when you have all these municipalities, every municipality has like its own city government, its own police department, its own fire service.
You're talking millions of people, and of course, criminals they don't have boundaries. There's no map for them, right? I mean, so you have to be able to communicate and share information and act on this information.
Yeah, Chicago's got about 3 million population.
Yeah.
Cook County, which includes Chicago, it's got about 5 million. So 2 million of suburbs in in Cook County. But if you include about those 250 municipalities, you're looking at 8.5 to 9 million people. So
Few.
That's a lot of crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So the idea is to put agencies in one room, not just share information, but make it actionable in real time and be able to respond and put these people in jail that are committing these acts of violence or criminal activity.
Yeah. So I do have a little background in intelligence. And what I try to do is figure out ways to collect information on crimes that are connected across this region, because the criminals have certain patterns, and whether those be organized retail crimes, residential burglary, commercial burglary, robberies, carjackings, those are crimes that tend to have certain patterns where there's a cluster or a constellation of clues and variables that tend to repeat over and over again. And the same communities will share those. For example, in West Suburban Chicago, it shares a lot of crime patterns with the North Shore, but not any of the communities in between because of certain demographics of them. So it could be 30 miles apart and we share very similar crime patterns committed by the same offenders, which don't live in either of them. They live in other parts of the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
So keep on taking each of those different types of crimes, again, the organized retail, the commercial burglary, and the residential burglary, and try to figure out which are the crews that are prolific or serial in nature that are doing this over and over again, and how do we ensure that they're being prosecuted the right ways across the counties by different prosecutors.
Wow.
That was always like a struggle for us when I was up here, right? Is like, how does the prosecution work, right? Because, like you said, when you have these imaginary boundaries, or a couple of feet, it's like, well, whose jurisdiction does this actually happen in, and how different is the prosecution from like, Kane and DuPage and Cook County and the city proper? It's insane.
So it would not be uncommon for us to investigate a robbery that happens in DuPage County, to serve a search warrant on an offender's apartment in Cook County or city of Chicago, and find guns that might not be related to the robbery. So then we need to worry about how are we, who are operating outside of our county borders, going to be getting a good prosecution on the possession of those guns by folks that shouldn't have them. I mean, that's just one example that seems to come up over and over again. Luckily, we've got some state's attorneys in these various counties that are now getting together and sharing this information because they realize that some of them are better positioned to prosecute some of these crime patterns. So they're going to be looking at the robberies and the burglaries and the gun possession cases as a region. So there's special teams within each of the prosecutors or state's attorneys' offices here for us to go through. So we're going to bypass maybe some of the other review processes with those prosecutors.
So that's like a positive step in the right direction, right? Because now not only do you have collaboration within police departments, now you have collaboration with prosecution bodies.
Yeah, there's a handful of press releases that just went out about overnight burglars that are hitting liquor stores. Talking 125 to 150 burglaries committed by, well, what's being indicted is 6 offenders, but the number is much larger than that. But these folks are committing crimes literally every single night across multiple counties. And what's difficult is that we get different prosecutors every time we call in for warrants and legal processes and charges. So we want to work hand in hand with assigned prosecutors from as soon as we recognize these patterns opening up. So we can then take them through the case.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not making some call at the end trying to package up a case, somebody fresh with hundreds and hundreds of pages worth of reports.
Yeah. Well, growing pains developing this product, this system. What's been a frustration?
I think some of the frustration is getting some of the individual municipalities to look beyond their borders.
Okay.
Is detectives have traditionally been assigned a case. This is yours. This is yours. This is mine. I look, oh, you have something for mine. I will take that bit of information, but I'll continue to work mine. Instead, what we haven't done is we haven't said these 3 cases are related and should be investigated as one, with all of us sharing all the information. But when you and you and you, right, we all work for different police agencies, how do we come together? So what are the tools that we're using? We're using things like Slack and cloud documents, spreadsheets, things that we can dump in, all have access and collaborate on. So I told you about going back to college a couple of years ago. And the one thing that I was really impressed with is 18 and 19-year-old classmates of mine that are using cloud documents on all the class projects. Yeah. And then I come back into the detective world and folks are like, well, I can't share a document with that other agency. They're going to be typing on my form and I'm going to be typing on their form. So we've got some of those barriers of what's mine and what's protected. And some of it is well-founded because we have to worry about records being retained. We have to release these as part of case notes. There's freedom of information and certain transparency issues that we have. And who's the owner of these records? So some of those antiquated thoughts with when records were actually paper records, they don't apply well to all this digital evidence that we have now. Notes used to be notes on a legal pad. Notes now are in a document that we all type into, or it's a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is going to be changing and getting edited as we learn information. So which version of the spreadsheet? So some of these laws about records retention kind of antiquated and haven't caught up with what we're dealing with.
So other than the laws and maybe some of the personalities that may always exist, and the kind of like you said, the silo of you know this is my information. I'm not gonna. Other than that, have you seen a pretty good effort from most agencies, or at least a majority of the agencies, to say, "Hey, look, we need to combine our efforts and put bad people in jail."
I would say most of them are willing to participate.
Yeah.
And what you get is a handful of players, like any team, right? You're going to have high performers, whether it be that 10% of high performers, right? The out of every 100 men, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
one, the warrior, right? Like,
Yeah. Right. Right.
you gotta have those 9 fighters. So we get a lot of agencies that are willing to cooperate and give up to the bigger good.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a couple that almost sabotage, right? It's like, this is my case and nobody's gonna mess with it.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna get credit for it. And I don't care if I don't close it. If I have to close the case out, I just want it done. Collaboration's hard. Takes a tremendous amount of energy to keep this on track before it gets out of control. And I think that's what keeps folks from getting involved in it. As long as we have a couple of these hard charging detectives and analysts that are willing to push this forward, I think the masses go along with them.
Yeah.
And some of it,
Right? It's critical mass.
Some of it is just turnover, right? There's some people you're never going to change. And we talk about this in our leadership classes. It's like, why do we do things this way? Well, because that's the way it's always been done. I can't imagine, like, if I'm paying you to be the police in my city, why would you ever leave the city borders, right? Like, they just can't wrap their heads around it.
So I'm lucky that I work for a chief of police that ran task forces for most of his career. He understands the regionalization and shared services model, and recognizes that for a community or a municipality to be safe, the surrounding areas have to be safe. And for that surrounding areas, just these concentric rings of bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you're waiting for the nexus, for that smoking gun to connect to your case, you're never going to make the connection. You have to be willing to understand that says, they haven't hit me yet. This crew has not committed a burglary or robbery in my town yet.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm going to stay connected to it. I'm going to monitor all the intelligence, all the files. I'm going to pay attention to who's committing it, what cars are involved, when they're operating, all those MO and the cluster of facts.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay attention to it. So when it does, I've pre-investigated it.
Yeah. It's that big mindset that when agencies see it, they're successful. That's awesome. Is there any, maybe some success stories that you can talk about, that you can think about, maybe some cases, or is anything that's not too sensitive, not, maybe not, I don't know.
So what's going on in some parts of DuPage County, Illinois right now is there's a group of detectives, supervisors of detectives that all came up together. That we were detectives, we were on different investigative task forces together. And now we're in positions to be leading teams.
Yeah.
And we always talked about, wouldn't it be cool if?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, now's if.
Yeah.
Now's the time
That's exciting.
that we actually get able to do the things that we talked about would be neat.
Yeah.
So now we're operating with a dozen agencies acting as one group of tactical officers, like plainclothes teams and investigators and analysts and the real-time crime centers and the drones and all these resources together, where we've basically come up with the hacks on which radio channels we can all operate on. And I'm able to surge my small detective team up to 20 and 30 detectives and plainclothes officers in just a radio call.
Wow.
So
force multiplier immediately.
Yeah. And this is something that happens daily.
Yeah.
So from the smallest case, like a pickpocket crew that's prolific and lifting purses and cashing out at local convenience store to burn it into gift cards, up to robbery crews, we're able to surge our resources and basically work each other's cases in conjunction. So, yeah, I mean, the successes are daily.
I think two things that maybe for any citizens watching this that might be relevant is, A, we talk about all these municipalities and all these police departments, but you have to realize that, like, because you talk about force multiplier, like a lot of these agencies might have a detective. So, right, what can you do as one detective or two detectives? And that's why this is so important. And then the other side of the crime side of that is like, hey, people don't just commit a crime, right? Or two crimes. Like, you have to understand, like, this is this person's career. They've chosen, this is a career. They're committing crimes like every night,
Yeah, I think it's even more important for those small agencies, which is the vast majority of the 18,000 police agencies in this country, is small
Absolutely.
agencies.
Yeah.
Small agencies means small detective teams, small specialty units. Not every team, or I'm sorry, not every department is going to need a SWAT team, a homicide team, canine, right? All these high level resources that require a tremendous amount of training. But what they need is somebody to call, right? In a shared model.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the task force model that I grew up on, is that
Yeah.
my agency hasn't experienced a homicide in 8 years. But when it happens, I need 40 detectives, and I get it.
Who know what they're doing.
In the meantime,
Yeah.
I investigate a lot of murders for other communities and pay it forward.
Yeah.
Right? That's the other benefit of the shared services and the task force operations, right? You're gaining real world experience and being mentored by other people in the field.
Yeah, so it's a way for us to accelerate our learning and the experiences and the exposures that we have to higher level incidents,
Yeah.
critical incidents, low frequency stuff that we can see much more frequently. So when it does happen in your isolated community, you have folks that have done this before.
Yeah. This is really a no brainer, right? How do you not buy into a system like this that makes your department better, makes your community safer? I mean, it just makes sense. And it must be frustrating when people don't buy into it, or like you said, don't click that button to share information, or want to departmentalize their,
Maybe anything that we haven't covered, like, why would agencies not, or what have you heard, or what other pushbacks, maybe, that you've heard, like, hey, I don't want to be part of this because of, X, right? I mean, the big thing would come to my mind would be liability. What's liability look like, right?
Yeah, liability, risk, dangers, exposure. I mean, those words get tossed around a lot by those that don't do things.
Right.
Right? I feel like it's just an excuse. This job is inherently risky, and there are things that we do to cover those risks, not eliminate them. Right? If we were about risk elimination, we would basically never go on a call for service.
Absolutely.
Wherever the bad thing happened, we would literally drive away from it and drive away slowly at that so you don't get in a car crash.
Well said.
It is just a part of this job, is you have to expose yourself to this. And I believe the public wants us to have some exposure to that danger on their behalf. Because if we don't absorb that risk, the community absorbs it through the crimes that are committed against them. The house break-ins, the robberies, the carjackings, those things are real crimes that have real victims.
Impact daily lives. Yeah.
So I believe it's on the police to absorb that. And I believe if you're a police commander or chief level officer, and that you're trying to eliminate your officers from absorbing that, you're basically deflecting it off back on your community.
I always joke, it's like, we're not making French fries, right? This is a dangerous job, right? That's why you train your staff properly and give them the tools they need. And then you won't have these issues, right? The violence is always going to be there. The problems are always going to be there, but I'm more equipped as a department to handle them.
There's a lot of talk about control, right? Is that a lot of chief executive officers want control of what's going on in their community. Control's an illusion.
Yeah.
You don't really control it. You might have influence over it. You're never going to fully control it. And some executives feel, the ones that resist this shared services model, feel that they're relinquishing that control when they have outsiders coming in and operating, because they may be operating under different or conflicting policies, strategies, or procedures that are just either a little bit off or completely divergent. Right? So we have to get ourselves together and have real conversations about what crime fighting strategy is. Because there's not a lot of agencies that are talking crime fighting strategies. What I mean by that is how you're going to be using technology, how you're going to be leveraging things like drones and aerial support, how you're going to be using plainclothes teams, when you're going to be exhausting digital forensics and physical forensics teams on what types of cases. So are you going to do it on stolen cars, only carjack cars, only murder cars? Like, when are you going to process and physically collect evidence? And a lot of it depends on how busy you are, how serious you are about stopping those crimes.
And what I'm hearing too is being more proactive as opposed to being reactive. Right, right. Am I hearing that right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about crime fighting strategy, I think that's one of the first
Okay.
and highest strategic level things is, am I going to be proactive or reactive? And each of those has different subcomponents to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I love that. That's great. I love that forward thinking, that big thinking and the big picture, right? And buying into something that may not benefit you today, but it's certainly going to benefit you at some point in the future. Like you said, maybe you don't have experience in this particular crime. Maybe it's a murder and you get one a year, but you're assisting other agencies and learning and the craft and the resources and the tools available. And then when that day comes, you're given, you're giving that victim, that family, the best possible because you're giving them, a good product, right? Which is our response. So I love that. Yeah.
Technology is taking off like never before. So if you are isolating your police department in the hopes of, protecting yourselves from liability, you're not learning, networking, and growing, right? Because there's always like a new tool for law enforcement to use or a new system. And it's like if you're just walled off, how will you learn out, right?
The technology thing is exploding to a point where our policies and our training can't even keep up. I'm being inundated with calls from salespeople and vendors and engineers of these programs trying to sell it, promote it, enhance it, get feedback from it. The policy thing is really what's hinking up a lot of agencies, is that they're demanding a policy before they bring the technology in. And these are emergent technologies that we haven't really even figured out what they can do. On a very regular basis, these companies that making the technology will send engineers to ride with some of our teams. They know we deploy it pretty well. Right? I think we do a great job of deploying these technologies. They come to us like, we want to see it in action. And the engineers, the people that designed it, are telling us, we never saw our stuff being used that way before.
Wow.
I says, well, quite frankly, your training program sucked. We had to figure it out on ourselves. And this is what we figured out.
Yeah.
We didn't know it couldn't do that. It actually does it really well.
Yeah.
And the people that designed it didn't know it. So there's that disconnect.
Wow.
So if we would come up with a policy, we would have never have learned that through experimenting.
Yeah.
So
That real-time feedback. Yeah.
So there was a movement in the 90s and the 2000s of basically putting policy, and very rigid policy at that, right off the get-go. When I started, they printed out policy. I got handed a binder that was 5 inches thick. Now they're digitized, but it would still be 5 inches thick.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a policy-driven culture, and everybody just wanted another policy.
Yeah.
It just was a patchwork of it.
I remember we would joke about that because you're like, we got a policy on how to go to the bathroom.
We had a policy on how to go to the bathroom with a gun belt on. It was the most requested policy from any other agency. Not our use of force, not our pursuit policy or those sexy ones. It was, they all wanted to laugh at the policy about how to go to the restroom with a gun belt.
I want to read that one,
Yeah.
actually. So interesting.
So we have to break free from some of that mentality and let people experiment.
Yeah.
So back to crime centers is, now that they're a thing, most of us still haven't figured out. Actually, nobody has really figured out what crime centers can or should do. There's no standardization. It's all about agency specific and what they need it to do, or how they figured it out, or what they have access to. And we're still learning.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be developing policy around that stuff. Maybe some guardrails about the administrative stuff, like
Sure.
to prevent leaks and other misuses of it, but not operationally, like not workflows or flow charts or checklists. That this is not the environment for that. This is for folks to go in there and be creative with the systems, shared amongst that real-time community for us to grow.
Yeah. Not pigeonholing you into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I fear that we're going to be back where we were before,
Yeah.
in some standardized policy that basically takes away all discretion, creativity.
The creativity, innovation, everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Something that we try to preach in like our leadership classes is like, I don't need a warm body. right? I don't need someone that's just gonna like, I can take a report. It's like, no, no,
Yeah.
I need people that can think independently. I need people that can think critically and think outside the box, right? Like make things happen. Like use your imagination.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we have had crime centers that have popped up and wanted to grow it faster than they could produce good, smart, creative people in there.
Yeah.
Curious people that wanted to learn the system and the ins and outs of it. And what those folks wanted is step by step, if this, then that, algorithmic type thinking.
Yeah.
And you know what we get out of those types of crime centers?
Well, not a lot.
Cut and paste.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Cut and
Yeah.
paste. Cut and paste is not, it's not anything analytical. It's no synthesis.
Yeah.
It's no like helping with intelligence. It's basically brokering from here to here. That's not what I want. I need you to take information and make sense of it with this other body of intelligence to push it out. That will always require a human. No AI is going to replace that. Such an intuitive type of an endeavor, intelligence.
Yeah.
This is not going to be fixed through computers.
I have to imagine, not on the department level, but the individual level. I have to imagine that, and it's pretty rewarding to not only see this and be part of this, but I mean, I'm sure there's areas within. I mean, 28 years is a long time. Your perspective is, and your experience brings a lot to the conversation. But I have to imagine all the different things you're experiencing now because of this type of collaboration that helping you in your career. And I don't mean selfishly. I mean like growth. Personal growth.
Oh, for sure. The route that I've taken into some of this technology and intelligence world is a little bit like what I would deem through the back door.
Yeah.
Like I didn't go into this with like super formalized training through like mainstream movement. I kind of stumbled on it in other ways. So if you were to look at our crime center, it is not patrol based as many others. It got developed through surveillance teams, through covert ops and supporting them.
Yeah.
So the technology that we have is different. So now to be able to grow, and then I learned a lot of these things through really bizarre cognitive frameworks. Kind of found I went through a stretch of 10 or a dozen years where I started studying the basically decision making science and learning science and getting up on Boyd's OODA, which is the observe,
Yeah.
orient,
Yeah.
decide, act model, or Snowden's Cynefin framework, which classifies systems into different ordered and chaotic and complex systems. And then Van Horn's left of bang framework.
Yeah.
So take all these different frameworks and like try to figure out how does this apply to my world as a detective, as a first responder, as an intelligence person, as a builder of real-time crime systems. So yeah, from a personal standpoint, it's been extremely rewarding
Yeah.
to be able to try all this stuff up and to be given a leash to basically try things out and see if it works.
It's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
Like when we would train new people, some of the best people that we FTO'd were when we hired people in their 30s. It's like, listen, I'm not going to tell you how to do this. What do you think should happen? Right? You've already kind of lived a good portion of your life. How would you do this? Right? Because we would always talk about in SWAT, like, listen, there's, there's not necessarily right and wrong. There's preferred. Here's my preference of how you would do that. But there's also this huge swath of like, that's acceptable. Right? And there's just not acceptable.
Yeah. And when we went through that phase on our team from this is the way to do it versus a preferred method and other acceptable methods, there was a divide within our SWAT team because some folks wanted this is the way. So like, how do we get conditioned through that? I mean, we could argue that it's through the education system. It could be through like some type of Tayloristic, factory, workplace learning model. But yeah, we haven't embraced you got to get in here, sit here, screw things up, move on, screw up something new, move on.
Yeah.
And that's extremely hard because you don't want to see people fail. But at the same time, that's how they're going to learn.
It's growth, right? Yeah. Take things apart, put them back together. And if there's a piece missing, well, figure out where it goes, right? And fail forward, right?
Yeah.
You're right. That's growth. And wow, that's incredible. I love that. I love not just the personal growth, but the growth of the department, that mindset and then ultimately like keeping communities safe through better, more effective policing, right? I mean, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking back of some of the things that we've talked about just in a short
Yeah,
time here,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And it feels like it's gone all over the place, yet it's all connected,
Yeah.
right? You can't talk about real-time crime centers without talking about drones. You can't talk about 911 systems without talking about real-time crime centers. You can't talk about detective work until you talk about intelligence work. And then intelligence work feeds into the real-time crime centers. And then none of this matters at all if you don't have operational strategy that goes along with it. And the operational strategy piece never happens if you don't have strong leadership.
Yeah, right.
So like it just keeps
It's like gears that
building,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like I've always said, I have boundary issues, right? Like I have a problem drawing lines around things and knowing that like I can't look in that place.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to see how everything connects.
You color outside the lines.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the same, you could make the same argument for the criminal side, right? They don't have the boundaries. They're always pushing those, and of course they don't have the rules and the ethics and the values and policies and everything that we have to abide by.
Which
could you
is
imagine?
why they're so successful.
100%, right? Yeah.
Okay. There's a book by General Stanley McChrystal called Team of Teams. And this goes back years about early stages of the war in the Middle East as to what the problems were with the U.S. military as composed to the cellular nature and like that those lone wolves of terrorism. And it's that they tried to apply a hierarchical machine to a very decentralized enemy, and it did not match up well. So we're trying to replicate what McChrystal did in the Middle East in policing in Chicagoland through this team of teams model. And we're maintaining hierarchy within agencies, but we're connecting all these nodes together, all the intelligence centers, all the real-time crime centers, all the dispatch centers, all the drone pilots, and trying to figure out ways to connect them.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be through sexy integrator programs or APIs because the personalities. So despite bad policy, despite bad bosses, how do cops on the ground make these connections and make it work? So this team of team models has been really, it resonates with me a lot because we've seen it work.
Yeah.
We've seen how so many officers from so many different agencies can combat these criminals that don't have the structure. So we need to destructure ourselves.
Yeah. Wow, it's incredible.
I think about the training aspect, going back to the training, it's like, we have recruits, it's like they just stand there, right? It's like, well, what do I do next? Like, what do you think, right? Like the criminals almost have a leg up on us because no one's saying like, all right, well, here's what you do to commit this crime, right? They learn organically. Wow, I got arrested pretty quick. That didn't work. So guess what? Next time I'm going to change, right? It's just the learning model is almost better, right? Because they're failing, like you said.
So I was a detective. I got promoted to sergeant. And where you go most places is back to patrol. Put on the uniform. I started working with a team of officers that I had never worked with before. These were folks that either came on or just we hadn't crossed paths, even on a small department. And after 2 days of my phone ringing, saying, boss, what should I do? The next roll call, I said, there's no more calling me for what I should do. I'm here to help you, but I'm not here to come up and generate solutions for you. Here's what the phone call needs to sound like. Sarge, this is what's going on. Short snapshot, because I ain't got all day, because I'm trying to help everybody else too.
Yeah.
Here's what I plan on doing about it. And here's something else that I thought about that I don't think is the best idea. I need you to generate 2 ideas and one of them that you plan on moving ahead with. Because at some point, I'm not going to answer the phone because I'm busy. You guys just got to do it. If you can't generate 2 ideas, you better phone a friend. And I never got the Sarge, what should I do anymore? And I started seeing them rely on each other and having a little bit more confidence.
Yeah.
And the other sergeants are like, yeah, I'm always answering, what should I do? I'm like, well, that's because you haven't laid down the groundwork yet. Like this is part of conditioning or reconditioning. I'm not sure. Maybe it's reconditioning folks to like make the decision.
Yeah.
Wow.
We hired you for a really important job. You need to be able to think quickly. It's a stressful environment.
And if
growth. Yeah.
And if it was something where I was going to overrule, where I'm like, Aaron, you know what? That thing that you wanted to do, I wouldn't do that. Let's do this instead.
Yeah.
I wouldn't stop there. Whether it was right then and there, if I had time, or later, let me walk you through my decision making process here. This is what's going to happen. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of this. I think this is what's going to happen. And I want you to basically get a glimpse as to what went through my decision factors on this. Not just, you know what, don't do that. Do option C instead. And he's like, all right, I don't even know why option C is good.
They're growing, their perspective, their experience, their confidence, everything. That's what we should be doing. Right. I mean,
You try to get away from another like bad leadership quality, or not leadership, but management or supervision, right? Because I said so, right?
yeah.
It's like, no, you need the explanation. So like I can learn and do better next time. Right. And I think that's the problem with the future of technology and your AI systems and your chat GPT. It's gonna be like, well, I just went there and did it for me. I went there and I got the answer. It's like, yeah, but you didn't work through the problem. So how are you going to do it next time?
Yeah, it's desirable difficulties.
Yeah.
Right? There's some cognitive scientists that use that term that says you have to experience trouble, you have to experience focus, failure, and uncertainty to be able to grow in whatever you're trying to learn. It's got to be difficult enough, not so much that it's going to intimidate you. I'm learning a foreign language right now with my kids. I'm on Duolingo and reading my kids' library books.
Yeah.
It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. Not programmed for that, but it's that desirable difficulties. Like you got to embrace sucking at it.
Yeah. Embrace the suck, right?
Yeah.
That's a military and law enforcement phrase, and we know what it means.
Yeah.
What's the language? What are you learning?
I'm learning French.
Wow.
So I took a couple years in high school, hated it. But then recently visited a couple French speaking countries. It reignited a flame, and it's been phenomenally rewarding for me. I almost take it as like the officer wellness piece, where it just like takes me out of whatever I'm doing because I'm like so focused on that.
You use the Duolingo app?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many days are on?
I'm about 500.
Oh, I'm 300 on German. So I thought I was high. Congratulations. That's awesome. Wow.
It's great. And that's what I could tell from the officer wellness standpoint, right? Because we're big on that. It's like, I have retirement coming up. It's like, well, what are you going to do next? Right? You can't just revert back to this vegetative state. It's like, listen, you always have to be out there. You always have to be active. You always have to be out there thinking and working and using your brain, right? You can't just shut down.
And I've had almost 3 decades of opportunities to training, conferences, workshops. Maybe it's an anomaly. I don't know what police training opportunities are like nationally, but I've had 3 decades to kind of figure out what I want to learn to make me good at the job now, but then could be marketable in my retirement.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
I like there are certain topics that I avoided. Like I was never into like fingerprints and crime scene tech, not my thing. But there's a life beyond policing doing those things, and there's a good chance that your city or your department is willing to pay you for training and setting you up for that next gig.
Yeah, right.
Polygraphers that go to the private market, right? They're always thinking, how can we use this job for like you said, the next career? So interesting. Wow, very interesting. Like the leadership perspective too that we've talked about. That's great. So read a lot of books.
The only thing I know about leadership is the only way of getting better at it is by trying new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like not only trying new stuff, but you've also encouraged people under your command to go out there, like I said, be part of that decision-making process, be innovative, be creative, and tell me how we can get to the solution safely. You don't want that call that, hey, we're going to be on the evening news, right? So that's exactly, we're developing these people. And so when they're in these positions of authority, they're going to be able to, pay it forward, right? And make those individuals better and ultimately the department and the community safer. So I think that's a win-win.
Maybe going back to some of the leadership stuff and how you handled your shift, do you see a change in the organization where people are like, ugh, I want to be off this guy's shift because I just like writing parking tickets? Or is there a desire like, I want to be on this guy's shift because they're doing things and he's pushing for change?
I mean, birds of a feather flock together, right? So like there's going to be folks that see things kind of my way that want to work on my team. They're going to apply for my team. There's going to be other guys that just they're oil and water. And they're going to try to avoid working for those bosses. But I mean, from the first time that there was a boss and a subordinate, like you got to play your boss, right? So there's going to be listeners out here. You're working for a boss you don't like you got to play to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just part of,
You're going to have it. It's going to happen at one point in your career or another, right? I mean, more than likely.
Oh, I did
Yeah.
it for years and years, but then I was rewarded other times with phenomenal bosses.
Yeah.
So I think you just end up with birds of a feather, and I find it interesting to find out, like, who are those sergeants that folks want to work for. And it's not the laissez-faires. Nobody wants to work for a laissez-faire boss because they see it as a liability for themselves.
Yep.
I worked for a boss that like never checked in with me. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I need somebody to oversee me.
A little bit of guidance.
I need a little bit more
Yeah.
involvement, not
Yeah.
micromanaging me, but I need a little bit more
Yeah.
involvement. But I've worked for the micromanager too, where it's like, hey, can you cut me some slack and like, let me figure this out? So
Wow.
That brings a whole other organizational issue, right? Like what you just said, because I talked to an officer down in Georgia, and he's like, listen, birds of a feather. They had shifts that knocked it out of the park and arrested criminals. And the other two shifts, nothing. So like, imagine that from a leadership perspective, right? He's like, wait a minute. One third of my police department's amazing. The other 2/3 are like, nah, they'll get it.
what I'm curious about is how the supervisor on those teams impacted that. If you gave that high performing team's supervisor other players, would that team become high performing? What is the impact that supervisor has?
Significant. We know that. Yeah. It's, I absolutely. It's something that we talk a lot in our research, in our leadership training, and some of the research we've dove into. I mean, the first line supervisor, I mean, you look at Gallup does a poll every year, effectiveness of the workplace. And they've been doing it for 25, 30 years. And that first line supervisor, whether it's law enforcement or whether you work for, J.C. Penney, it doesn't matter. That impact is incredible. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you can I'm not saying every low performer that goes into that atmosphere and that culture is going to all of a sudden just turn, but I think you're going to see more success than not, and the same thing, you might have a person who's relatively a home run hitter or somebody that's more effective, could go into an environment where maybe he or she shuts down a little bit because of the impact, the negative impact that first line supervisor gives him or her,
All right. So I got to change the topic a little
Absolutely,
bit
yeah.
into what does a good high performing police team look like?
Ooh.
Because it's not all about stats. It's not all about arrests. It's not all about ticket numbers. It's not all about numbers, right? You can't always.
It's not a metric for everything.
Things,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you qualify the other side of this, which is how do you handle the good citizen contacts, the walk and talks and the community events? So we could argue that says, no, my team is doing well, but it's doing well at this other thing.
Yeah. It's fluid, right? Because we've talked about this in the government where, you arrest El Chapo, great, but what if you did a million other arrests? One case compared to what has more impact? What has more? It's fluid, right? It depends on there's so many factors involved. But I'm curious can you give the answer from your perspective?
Well, so I want to put this on and frame it with leadership. Is that I don't believe there's bad leaders. I believe there's leaders that just have a different agenda than others. Right? Like, who's the greatest president? Right? Barack Obama, Teddy Roosevelt, Donald Trump, right? Like, they all had qualities pushing forward their own agendas. Now, you might not agree on what the agenda was, but they were good at moving it forward.
Yeah.
So we beat up a lot of police chiefs saying that this is a horrible leader. Well, he's just taking the department in a direction that you don't want to go. Right? You may be taking it into a more community, transparent, environment, not such a law and order crime fighting environment, which is maybe what you want. And then you'll have the awesome chief.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Lou the intellect. That's what I told you.
Yeah, I know. Do you, I don't know, maybe you don't, maybe you do. Like, there's a lot more studies within law enforcement. Police One, for instance, every year does, I think it's called What Cops Want. And they look at, what are we seeing nationwide within law enforcement? We're seeing, a struggle for people, right? I don't know if your department's, where it needs to be numbers wise, but it's a real thing, right? I mean, people are struggling. When we all started our law enforcement careers, I mean, it was, 1,000 applicants to one. Right now it's what, 2 to 1, if that, right? I mean, and now we're like begging people to take these jobs. So, but police, get back to police one, they're asking questions like, why are you leaving these agencies? What are the problems you have? And consistently, it's poor agency leadership, and to go to your point, that's what they're unhappy about. Right. I mean, I know some people are going to leave for other reasons, but a lot of people are leaving looking for greener pastures because they don't like the culture in their current, department. And you could probably make that argument, beyond law enforcement, but
Well, who do we want to be our cops? Who does the citizenry want to police
that's
them?
changed quite a bit too, right?
Right? Because if it's community events, right, that's different than crime fighters.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be both. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's really hard to be everything to everyone. So the police, this is Lou talking, is that I have a duty to, again, absorb some of this danger, right? And give justice to victims. And that's through enforcement of laws and apprehension and, proactive policing strategies. That's not to say that our folks that are in the community events are doing it bad, but luckily my agency is supporting law and order. We don't have a staffing problem. And if I were to look at other staffing across the agencies around us, is that those that have proactive police strategies are well staffed.
Interesting. Yeah.
Now, I don't know what those communities want, but the police chiefs and the command staff are pushing for that style of policing, and they're getting good quality candidates to come in.
Wow. Yeah, we could talk forever for this stuff.
Right.
Huh? We probably need to cut it somewhat short.
Sometimes we cap it. We don't want to be too long.
Well, this has been great. I learned a lot. I love your perspective and your experience, and yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, well, it's fun to talk about this stuff. I mean, it wanders all over the place.
Yeah. Right? That's good, right? It's organic conversation, right? That's how we learn how we get better. We've been talking about it all night.
I think there's not enough conversations that are linking these things, is that we try to have isolated conversations around wellness, leadership, technology, crime fighting, transparency, community support. Like, we try to pigeonhole these things, and this is not how my brain's wired. My brain's wired to kind of look at the links and the cause and effect and the unintended consequences, and to be able to say that we're going to take this route and I'm going to potentially give this up as a trade-off. Right? I want to be able to argue both sides of any position and realize what I'm giving up and what I'm potentially gaining from each decision. So when we add on a dozen different topics, they're all going to modulate differently based on how you change something.
And something else I remember about you from back in the day is sometimes you kind of play this devil's advocate role, not because you don't agree with me, but you're trying to challenge me.
Yeah, I can see that.
To think bigger and better, right?
Yeah, and not everybody appreciates that.
No.
Right? That when you ask a tough question, like, can't come up with any examples now.
No, but I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
You broaden your perspective and
like argue the other side for me.
Yeah.
One thing that I started doing in my training classes is on some of these, let's say, use of force. I ask the audience or my students, argue the other side of this, whether you believe it or not. And what that does is that removes the personal element. Now, I'm not asking, what does Aaron think about it? What I'm asking is, just give me the other side.
Yeah.
You could think it's total rubbish. You could think that it goes completely against what your belief system is. But what is that other side? No multiple sides of the argument.
Yeah, when you remove
what
yourself from taking the blinders off, right? And wow.
And you got to remove that personal attack from it too.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's like, whoa, nobody's going to argue against Aaron. We're going to argue against the idea. You got to decouple the idea or the stance from the person.
No way we could potentially end this maybe is, what would you tell a young officer based on all these things? Like if I was brand new in this profession, be a police officer, what, based on all the things you said, like what, how can I better prepare myself? Just something, I don't know, some words of wisdom. How's that?
You got to find the gray-haired patrol officer and detective.
Okay.
the one that's going to have a little bit more experience, but maybe doesn't have the rank for some reason, that is able to guide you.
Personal power, right? Yeah.
Right. Like I realized that once I got promoted and got chevrons, like I lost the ability to mentor some folks, right? Because it was now supervisor and subordinate. There were a lot of gray-haired cops that I relied on when I was young to guide me through things, both personal and professional. And nowadays, we don't have as many of them, so they're even more valuable. Find those people, pick their brains about personal finances and home life, training tracks, and the career development or trajectory that you want to take. Those people are gold in your agency. Probably your FTOs, folks that have cycled in and out of specialty units, they've got broad experiences. You got to find those people, tap into them, because they're not always going to tell you what the company line is, right? They're going to give you their own unfiltered raw version of it. And then you got to figure out what you take and what you leave.
So we talked about, the word I use is discernment, right? We take in lots of information and you have to discern what's right and wrong, what's good for you.
That's great advice.
All right, we ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think any last words? He goes quite a bit.
No, thanks for
I mean, in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me on. This is fun. It's just unstructured. Let's see where it goes.
That's what we are, unstructured.
I appreciate it, and would love to do it again with you guys.
Yeah, we can make it happen again. Yeah. All right. Well, if you have more questions about real-time crime centers or anything in that arena, reach out to us. We'll link our email address at the end of this. Or if you're in law enforcement and want to know about training or leadership training, use that email address as well. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.